Jerry and Gina for hosting me, and especially thank Glenda and Tara Sheehan. And this is our team that's going to work on this project, which I'm going to talk to you about. So I'll come to this in a second, but I, for some unknown reason, just 2 seconds ago decided to start with a story, and I don't know why, but here it is. So about a year and a half ago, I wrote this book called God. That's the title of the book, and the subtitle is A Story of Revelation. And the book is about 10 people. It starts with Job in the Old Testament. And, you know, if you read the Old Testament, Job suffers and he's a good person. And we still ask the question, why do good people suffer? And then the book moves to St. Paul in the New Testament, who had a revelation on the road to Damascus. And then it goes through a series of people, Christian saints, Rumi, and it ends with Einstein and the Indian poet Tagore on the nature of the universe, which is another word for scientists. Don't use the word God, say universe. But it's a big mystery why the universe is there and why we have awareness of the universe. So I was traveling through the country, and part of my book tour was Los Angeles, and I got picked up by my son, and since this is a year and a half ago, by my then 5-year-old grandson, whose name is Krishan, but we call him Krishu. And as we got off the airport in the baggage claim area, he looks up to me, this 5-year-old kid, and he says, Dada, which is the Indian term for grandfather. On the father's side, we have different terms. He says, what is dark energy? I mean, that's how he greeted me. So I said, what do you know about dark energy? And he said, it flows through the night sky. Very poetic. I said, what else do you know about dark energy? He said, it's 70% of the universe. How many of you know that? Okay. And he says 70% of the universe. So I'm kind of wondering, you know, I'm Indian, so we think, who's recycling here? Okay. But I keep it to myself, and then we get out of the airport, and we're driving by Santa Monica. I roll the window down, and we're driving by the ocean, and we're looking out, and he looks at me and says, how did they make the ocean? I said, who make the ocean? He said, oh, they. I said, no, that's not the right question. I can't answer the question till you tell me what you mean by they. And so he thinks for a bit, and then he reframes the question. He says, how did the ocean get made? So I said, well, it got made the same way as the Earth. It's a piece of rock. It fell off a star, and there are lots of those rocks around. We call it the solar system. And do you know how many planets there are in the solar system? He said, well, if you count Pluto, there are 9. And if you don't count Pluto, there are 8. So, you know, you can guess what the level of my bewilderment. So I said, okay, where did the solar system come from? He said, from the galaxy. I said, yeah, what's the name of the galaxy? He says, the Milky Way. I said, that's true. Where did the Milky Way galaxy come from? He said, from other galaxies, the universe. And I said, and where did the universe come from? And he said, from another dimension. So, by this time, I'm a little bit freaked out, because this is what I've been thinking about for 30 years. And this kid, in 2 minutes, summarizes the whole thing. So, by now I'm convinced that this kid is an incarnation of Galileo or somebody like that, So I said, how do you know this? And he says, it's on my Pokemon. Okay, now, I tell you this story for many reasons. First is, if you're not up to speed with Pokemon, you're not part of the collective conversation. Okay? And secondly, what my little grandson raised are the two most open questions in science. The two most open questions. Open means no answer, or any answer. The first open question in science is, what's the stuff of the universe? What is it made up of? And the reason it's open is, the shortest answer is we don't know. And the reason we don't know is because precisely what my grandson was saying, 70% is dark energy, which used to be called the cosmological constant by Einstein. This is some energy that's evenly spread out throughout the universe. We don't know what it is, but what it's doing is it's moving galaxies apart from each other, and this is happening faster than the speed of light. So right now, as we speak, the cosmic horizon, which is the furthest the universe is from where we are, is about 48 billion light years away from where we are. 48 billion, even though the universe is 13.8 billion. Okay, so you say, how come? Well, because it's expanding faster than the speed of light. So wherever this cosmic horizon is, galaxies are tumbling across this into the unknowable, not the unknown, the unknowable. Because by the time light gets from there to here, our particular solar system and galaxy will have exhausted its thermonuclear energy and burnt itself up into the heat death of absolute zero. So it's not only unknown, it's unknowable. 70%. 25% of the universe, or 26%, depending on who you talk to, is something called dark matter. So why is it called dark matter? It's called dark matter because it's invisible. Why is it invisible? Because it does not emit light, it does not reflect light, it does not absorb light, and it does not radiate light. In other words, it's not atomic. This is made up of atoms. Your body is made up of atoms. Everything that we know is made up of atoms. But dark matter is non-atomic. It's invisible. And why do we call it matter? The reason they call it matter is because it bends space-time in the same way as regular matter. And because it bends space-time in the same way as regular matter, it's responsible for the gravity, the most of the gravity in a galaxy. So were it not for this dark matter, you wouldn't have a galaxy held together. It's the scaffolding of a galaxy. And because it's the scaffolding of a galaxy, like Milky Way, Andromeda, Virgo, on, there are hundreds of millions of galaxies with billions of stars and trillions of, now they say, planetary systems. They're saying that there are 300 habitable planets in our own galaxy. And if you want, you can get an app. Every time they discover a new galaxy, it beeps. And they're discovering one every week. Okay? So if it weren't for this dark matter, you wouldn't have a galaxy held together. And if you didn't have a galaxy held together, our solar system wouldn't be held together which means you and I would not be held together. Our bodies are held together by gravity. Okay, so bodies would fall apart. You wouldn't be able, you wouldn't stick to the ground or whatever. So if you don't believe in God, you can at least every day wake up and say, thank you, dark matter, for existing, because if dark matter didn't exist, we would just blow up like this. Okay. Say a prayer to dark matter every morning. Well, we're left with only 5% of matter, which is atomic. And of that, 99.999% is interstellar dust, which is invisible. And if you don't believe me, you can go Google this information or whatever. The visible universe with hundreds of galaxies, hundreds of millions of galaxies, and each galaxy has at least 100 billion stars, with trillions of planetary systems, is 0.01% of what exists out there. 0.01%. And that includes everything that can be visibly seen. The rest is either unknown or unknowable. Now, it so happens that your body, your physical body, which is mostly carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and nitrogen, that's 98%. Hydrogen, carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen. The hydrogen comes from the Big Bang, 13.8 billion years ago. The rest of it comes from stars and galaxies millions of years ago. So your body, this body that you're sitting there listening to my lecture, and my body is held together by invisible whatever, because we don't know what it is. And then its actual stuff is stardust. And so if we were to actually say, who am I, which was our meditation today, the best answer is that I and you, we are stardust beings that have consciousness. We are stardust, we are luminous stardust beings that have awareness. Awareness of ourselves, and awareness of each other, and awareness that there's a universe. But it's a mystery, isn't it? Because when you start to look at the body, the physical body, which is this stardust, carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, other things, calcium, phosphorus. Well, these are elements or atoms, but when you say, what are the atoms made up of? What are they made up of? They're made up of particles. What are particles? They're waves. And where are these waves? And if you ask a physicist, when a particle is not being looked at, when you don't look at a particle, it disappears into a wave. And when you say, where is the wave? It's everywhere. There's no location for a wave. And unlike a particle, a wave, particles have units of mass and energy. Waves have no mass, no energy. So where are they? And I spent my time with physicists. Tomorrow there's an article coming out in the Nature of the Universe in the Chronicle. I sent it to you if you want. It'll be on Huffington day after. But the fact is, what's the nature of the universe? What's it made up of? The answer is nothing. Because everything is invisible, and what the little bit that is visible is also made up of molecules, atoms, subatomic particles, and when you go beyond that, you end up with nothing. Okay? So this physical body and that physical body, it appears to be material to our senses, but it's actually nothing. When you go beyond the appearance of molecules, you end into a subatomic cloud. You go into the cloud, you end up with nothing. In fact, you can read popular books these days, The Universe from Nothing. So the crucial question then is, what is the nothing from which we all come? What is the nothing from which everything comes? Dark matter, dark energy, atoms, molecules, physical bodies, stars, galaxies, trees, dogs, insects, everything. Is it just a void, or is it the womb of creation? What is the womb of creation? Does nature go to the same place to create a galaxy of stars, a cluster of nebulas, a rainforest, human body? A thought. What's a thought? Where does a thought come from? So these are, as I said, open questions. Open means any answer will do because we don't have an answer. That's the first open question in science. The second open question in science is, what is consciousness? And when I say consciousness, I use the consciousness synonymously with awareness. So we exist, number one, but the second thing is we know that we exist. I know that you exist. Now, if you ask me what is the nature of existence, the answer is we don't know. It's nothing. And then you say, how do you know that you exist? You say, because I'm conscious. And then you say, where is this consciousness? The answer is we don't know scientifically. Okay. People have struggled with this for thousands of years. And, you know, for the last 200-300 years, people have actually said, because brain science has evolved, and, you know, you have an Aspen Brain Forum, and you have Paul Allen funding a Institute for Brain Research in Seattle. So the fashion for the last few decades is consciousness is created by the brain. Okay, it's a reasonable thing to think. You know, so biologists especially, they say consciousness is a product of the brain, just like your pancreas makes pancreatic juice, your gallbladder makes bile, your stomach makes hydrochloric acid, your brain secretes consciousness. So if you have thoughts, feelings, emotions, memories, desires, intention, instincts, drives, creativity, free will, it's produced by your brain. And that's been the fashionable thing to say. In fact, now that we have MRIs, you know, when you imagine a sunset or you have a thought, we can look at the brain and see which part of the brain lights up. So it's reasonable to assume that your consciousness is produced by the brain. The problem is we don't know if it is, then how? How do neural networks, electrical firings, electricity basically, produce thought? If they do. In fact, this is the second open question. We do not know how we experience anything. We do not know how we experience anything. So let me give you an example of that. Think of a beautiful sunset in the mountains here. Can you think of one? Do you see a picture? You see a picture? Where's the picture? Do you think if I went inside your brain, I would see a picture of a sunset? All you see is electricity and molecules. So where's the picture? You're not experiencing electricity, you're experiencing a picture. Or if I say to you, think of the love you experience for your husband or your children, you have a feeling, right? Where's that feeling? If I go in the brain, there's only electrochemicals. So how do you get that experience? Or if I say, what's this color? And what is this color? Do you see any blue rays of light coming from here to your eyes? What's coming to your eyes? photons with no color. What's going from your eyes to your brain? Electricity with no color. What's happening in your brain? Chemicals. So where's the blue? No answer. Okay, in fact, everything that we experience as the physical world, as we experience right now, as Aspen, you look out of the window, everything that you experience and we experience each other, all that's going to your brain through your five senses is electricity. That's all. Every sense converts into electricity and action potential, chemicals, but we experience sound, touch, sight, taste, smell. We experience a three-dimensional world in space and time. How? What's the answer? Don't know. So these are the two most fundamental questions of our existence. What is reality? We don't know. How come we have awareness that there is reality? Don't know. And so I start with this because, you know, this should fill you with what philosophers call epistemological humility. Okay, we haven't the vaguest idea why anything exists at all. Okay, and why are we aware of it? And if you have epistemological humility, it also brings a sense of reverence and compassion and a feeling of gratitude, which great spiritual traditions have said that's what is the most important thing in our life. That's the spiritual experience, is nothing but being totally mystified by our existence. I think if you're not totally mystified by our existence and surprised by it, then we probably don't deserve to exist. And if you're totally surprised by it and you won't take it for granted, then it'll throw you into the present moment. And once you're thrown into the present moment, you'll see that actually it's all one thing. It's all one thing. What we call physical matter, what we call mind, and what we call consciousness, it's the same thing. It appears differently. The mind is the subjective experience of consciousness, and we experience impulse. Our thoughts are also molecules, and every time you think a thought, you make a molecule. And they are both different aspects of a deeper domain of consciousness, which is the mystery or the source. And so we have to go back to some Eastern spiritual traditions, and Buddhism and the Vedanta. They say there's only one thing, and that one thing is consciousness. And the mind is the subjective experience of consciousness, the physical body is the objective experience of consciousness, and the physical world is the objective experience of consciousness. And I am that. The phrase in Vedanta is Tattvamasi. Tattvamasi means I am that, you are that, all this is that, that's all there is. And it's all one process. Now, this is called the perennial philosophy. It's not particularly Indian, but it is also, because it goes back to the Vedanta. Buddhism came from it, but it is also what Aldous Huxley called the perennial philosophy. The transcendentalists like Emerson, Thoreau spoke of it. William Blake spoke of it. It's called perennial philosophy because people throughout the ages have experienced what is called pure consciousness. And pure consciousness is a field of possibilities. It's a field of creativity. It's a field of inseparability. It's inseparable so that it can be experienced as love. The great Indian poet Tagore said, love is not a mere sentiment or emotion. It's the ultimate truth at the heart of creation. And the ultimate truth of the heart of creation is that we are the same being with different disguises. The same consciousness with that's like it's the same electricity that's in the light there in my watch and in my little gizmos that I'm wearing. And so it's one thing. And if you tap into it, you tap into creativity, you tap into synchronicity, you tap into intention, you tap into possibility. And that's been the pursuit of sages and seers throughout the ages. When people have peak experiences or what we call unity consciousness, and they realize that the ground of your being is the ground of all being. The self of the universe, so we say self-directed biological transformation. So obviously, what is the self? And most people say the self is, a lot of people will say it's my body. But your body is star stuff, which is recycling. I don't know if you know, but you recycle almost your entire body, except for cartilage and some little pieces of cartilage and bone. You recycle almost your entire body every year, 98% of it. So your stomach recycles every 5 days. Your skeleton recycles every 3 months. Your skin recycles once a month. Your DNA, which is, what is DNA? It's very interesting because we're talking about genes. What are genes? Okay, did you know that 70% of your genes are the same as a banana? Okay? There's a lot of genes that you have. 80% are the same as a monkey. 98 point something percent are the same as a chimpanzee. 80% are the same as a mouse, sorry. Okay? So DNA is the record in your body of evolution. Your DNA goes back to the first living organisms that appeared on the rims of volcanoes 2.8 billion years ago. So next time you want to impress somebody at a cocktail party, these organisms are called chemolitho-autotrophic hyperthermophiles. Yes, chemolitho-autotrophic hyperthermophiles. Chemo because they're chemicals, okay? Chemolitho-autotrophic, they lived on the rims of rocks. And autotrophic, they started to self-replicate and self-eat. And hyperthermophiles because the temperature in the volcanoes. Those are your ancestors. And then they evolved into insects and bacteria, and you still carry about, of the 600 trillion cells in your body, most of them are bacterial cells. You're a walking microbial factory with a few human genomes attached to it. Very few. Most of it is. So here we are carrying the history of evolution. Here we are carrying the history of the universe from the moment of the Big Bang. And this is all recycling. Every breath that you take in 10 to the power of 22 atoms from the physical universe. 10 to the power of 22 atoms means 10 followed by 22 zeros. Every breath that you breathe out 10 to the power of 22 atoms. So at the atomic level, you're breathing out little bits and pieces of your heart and kidney and brain tissue. And technically speaking, we're all intimately sharing our organs with each other all the time. So, the great American poet, Walt Whitman, he said, every atom that belongs to you belongs to me as well. Every atom that belongs to you as well belongs to me. Walt Whitman. This is not a metaphor of poetry. This is a fact of biology. You have 1 million atoms in your body right now that were once in the body of Jesus Christ, or Moses, or Genghis Khan, or anyone you want to think about. In just the last 3 weeks, a quadrillion atoms have gone through your body that have gone through the body of every other living species on this planet. So think of a tree in Africa, think of a squirrel in Siberia, think of a peasant in China, think of a taxi driver in Manhattan or Calcutta. You've stuff in your body that was there only 3 weeks ago. And in 1 year, you've recycled the whole thing. So if you think you're your physical body, you have a bit of a problem. Which one are you talking about? This is my year 2014 model. January, what month are we in? January 19th. Last time I came to Aspen, I brought the same suitcase, but not the same physical body. My suitcase has a longer shelf life than my body. Okay? And my body doesn't belong to me. Your automobile may belong to you. Your house, beautiful house in Aspen may belong to you, but your body doesn't. You have to share it with mine and with every other species on this planet. So that's the first thing. Your body is not a thing. At the most basic level, your body is made out of nothing. And at the most basic level, your body needs all this dark matter of the universe to keep it around. And it's the recycling of stardust. And so you say, hey, this is amazing, but it's not mine. Okay, so then we say, as I said earlier, where's the mind? What's the mind? And you know, scientists have a lot of problems with these words because nobody knows what they're talking about. So for the last 25 years, I know what the Vedanta would say, what Buddha would say about the mind, but you talk to scientists in the West and they can't define mind. So finally I found one person who could define it, and I tested his definition with everyone that I could. And his name is Dan Siegel. He's probably been here. Do you know Dan Siegel? So Dan Siegel is a neuropsychiatrist from UCLA. And actually, he's one of the great people who's mapped the brain in different, tells you what is happening in the brain. You have to realize that correlation is not causation, right? So your brain and your mind, there's some correlation. But it doesn't seem to be causation, because you have to think a thought in order to fire a neuron. Where's the thought before? If I said, imagine a sunset, where was that before you did the imagination? And when you did the imagination, you had the thought, the image, and the neural firing at the same time. That's a correlation. Just like when you wake up every morning, the sun rises. That doesn't mean your waking up caused the sun to rise. Okay, you don't think that your waking up causes the sun to rise. If you did, then you'd be sent to see a psychiatrist. That's a correlation. Same thing, our mind and our brain are correlated activities. Okay? So Dan Siegel defines the mind as follows. It's a brilliant definition, tried it everywhere, nobody has objected. At Harvard Medical School, Grand Rounds, UCLA, nobody objects. This is how Dan Siegel defines mind. He says the mind is an embodied and relational process, embodied in the body, and relational process in relationship to other minds that regulates the flow of energy and information in the whole ecosystem. So right now I'm speaking to you. Basically, I'm sharing my thoughts with you. But as I'm sharing my thoughts with you, and as you're listening to me, very mysteriously, those thoughts are being converted into electrical impulses, which are going to your brain, where molecules are firing, and very mysteriously, you understand what I'm saying. So that mind then is embodied in my brain, embodied in your brain, and it's relational because we are exchanging ideas. But it's embodied not only in the brain, it's embodied in the rest of the body. Why? Because these neurotransmitters in the brain, they have receptors to in every cell in your body, your immune system, your stomach cells, your heart cells. So today, if you say, I have a gut feeling about such and such, You're not speaking metaphorically. Your gut makes the same molecules that your brain makes when it has the same idea. In fact, you should trust your gut feelings because unlike brain cells, gut feelings haven't yet learned how to doubt their thinking. Okay, so gut feeling, heart feeling, these are literal things. Your mind is embodied not only in the brain, but in every cell in the body. Okay, and it's regulating the flow of energy and information in your body. Why? How? Through meaning. It's very mysterious how this happens. We don't know how this happens. But just remember, your mind is not in your brain. It's everywhere. Okay? And it's in all the cells of your body. It just happens to speak in English with an Indian accent here. That's the only difference. It's kind of linguistic here. But everywhere, the mind is floating in your brain, in your body, and now through the internet in the entire cyberspace. It's going right through this space. You send somebody a tweet, a picture, boom, right through this space, through those walls, bouncing off satellites, going through cable channels. The mind is everywhere. It was everywhere. But now our technology is saying, actually, we can see it. I just took a picture of Jerry and sent it to somebody in China. And what went from here to China wasn't a picture. Some photons bounced against each other, went through these walls, and went and showed up in somewhere in China in somebody's iPhone. And from there, an electrical impulse went to their brain, and they saw a picture in their consciousness. So the only space where we share everything is mind space, is consciousness space. The rest is just detours. You know, if you write a tweet or you send a letter to somebody, and what we process is meaning. So if somebody says, I love you, and you're in love with them, what happens in your biology? You make dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and opiates. So opiates make you feel high. Dopamine makes you happy. Serotonin gives you self-esteem, and oxytocin makes you want to cuddle. Okay? And all you've heard is 3 words: I love you. And those 3 words were transmitted to your consciousness through electricity, through photons. Now let's say the person who says, I love you, is the person that you're now thinking of maybe divorcing. And he or she says, I love you. Do you think you'll make dopamine? You think you'll make oxytocin? You'll make cortisol and adrenaline. Okay? That'll raise up your blood pressure. That'll suppress your immune system. And you say, you know, it's the same 3 words. The same 3 words, the same electricity that goes to your brain. How come completely different process? And where is this process being done? So the mind is an embodied and relational process that's regulating the flow of energy and information, but what is processing this energy and information? It's your consciousness, it's your spirit. Okay? Because there's no mechanical substance, no electrical thing that can process meaning. How do you process meaning? So, you know, there's all this work on artificial intelligence, and it's very good, but it's all based on algorithms. Okay? Meaning, imagination, feeling, subjectivity, creativity, choice. How do you program that? Because programs are based on mathematical algorithms. And this is totally unpredictable. Where is context? Where is meaning? Where is purpose? Where is choice? Where is creativity? It's not in your brain. It's not even in your mind. It's in your spirit. And that spirit is consciousness. So consciousness is the self. And in the self, we experience mind, we process mind. In the self, we process the molecules of our body. It's from there that things are popping in and out. And now we have to find out the nature of this consciousness. And, there are many scientists who say, number one, consciousness is non-local. Non-local means it cannot be localized. But actually, the whole universe is non-local. You can't localize anything. The molecules of your body are recycling everywhere. Your mind is recycling everywhere. And so your consciousness is also non-local. It doesn't have a location. It's non-local not only in space, but also in time. That means it's eternal. In the Vedanta, they say, water cannot wet it, wind cannot dry it, weapons cannot shatter it, fire cannot burn it. It's eternal, it's timeless. Okay, but as it becomes local, it appears to be time-bound. It appears as bodies, minds, observers, modes of observation, etc. And of course, we process our senses differently. If there's an insect with 100 eyes and is looking at Deepak Chopra, first of all, it doesn't have a label. The dog at the White House doesn't know that President Obama is this important guy. Okay, that's a human thing. But every sentient being actually has its own version of the universe. An insect with 100 eyes, I don't know what it sees when it looks at me. A dolphin's universe is infrasonic. A bat through the echo of ultrasound. A chameleon's eyeballs swivel on 2 different axes. You can't even remotely imagine what this room would look like to a chameleon. So there's no such thing as a fixed reality. It all depends who's looking, what is the instrument of observation, what is the context, the cultural, the scientific, the religious. It's too complicated. Okay? What is reality? It's consciousness. And consciousness is a field of possibilities. So, I've been writing books, and by the way, it's not 70, it's 75. I'm not counting. Not counting. But, I've been doing this for a long time, but about 2.5 years ago, I was at TED Med, and I had just come from a monastery where I'd lived for a month, begging on the streets and living a Spartan life, and I had something to share, so I got to share with TED Med, which is the medical people at TED. And then Rudy Tanzi, who's the head of neuroscience at Harvard, is the head of neuroscience, but also genetics. He has a genetics lab, and he is the world expert on Alzheimer's. He had given a talk also, and we were both in the men's room in the urinal. And I turned to him, I said, I really enjoyed your talk. Do you think our brain is a verb or a noun? And I swear to God, he stopped doing what he was doing. And he said, let's go outside and talk. Okay, so I found in Rudy a soul brother, because Rudy understands that the self of the individual is the self of the universe. He also understands that your neurons are constantly being triggered by every experience. How could they not be? If you're listening to me, watching a movie, you have to use your brain to do it, so your neurons are being triggered. Your neural networks are firing with every experience, and therefore the genes are also active. So your body is not a noun, it's a verb, it's a process. Just like the universe is not a noun, it's a verb, it's a process. And it's an endless process, and the process is experience. So Rudy and I got together, we wrote this book, Super Brain, which did well. It was a PBS show. We're doing Super Genes now. But the bottom line is, you are not your body, you're not your mind, you're not your genes, you're not your brain. You are the self. And at the core of your being, that self is also the self of the whole universe. So I'd like you to try something very simple right now as you're listening to me. Just turn your attention to who's listening. So as you're listening to me, be aware of the listener. And that presence that you feel, that's consciousness. Spiritual traditions call it the soul. It's not your mind, which might be saying, I wish I'd gone to the bathroom before the lecture. What am I going to have for dinner? That's a conversation. And that conversation comes and goes. But this presence is always there. So when you were a teenager, there was a different body, different mind, different emotions, and this presence. When you're a baby, different mind, different body, different emotions, there was this. This is the non-changing factor in the midst of everything else that's changing. And so spiritual tradition said, hold on to this because it's the only part of you that's real. Everything else is a projection. Okay, so that was the self. And we said, we want to create a new paradigm. If we really all got this, if we all experience peace, harmony, laughter, love, if we all felt compassion, joy, equanimity, which are what are called divine emotions, this would be a different world. But then, you talk to a scientist, this is, what's the science? Okay? So that's when we came up with the idea. And the idea was that we can take a few people, and we already did it already, the first study is done. We took people who come to a retreat at our center, where they go through meditation. And what the first study was, in 4 days, people participating in the retreat, mostly meditation, their telomerase, which is the enzyme that controls telomeres, which is your biological clock at the end of your chromosomes, went up by 40%. They had never seen that. The study was done under Elizabeth Blackburn, who got the Nobel Prize in 2009 for the discovery of telomerase. So she's a Nobel laureate, UCSF. And if telomerase goes up, it means genes are being activated. And now we know there are about 500 genes that are responsible for inflammation. And when you're sick, for any reason, doesn't matter what the sickness is, the 500 genes that cause inflammation, they get what is called downregulated, more inflammation. So genes are like activities, they're verbs. You can dial them up or you can dial them down, depending on the quality of your life. Okay, so we did telomerase, then we went to Scripps, and we said that our foundation, we went to Scripps, and we said, can you do digital readouts of what's happening in biology when our subjects meditate? So now the technology is so simple. You have a little sensor, you wear it here, another little sensor, it's the size of a quarter, literally, and the consistency of a Band-Aid. You don't even know that you're wearing it. And your iPhone picks up wirelessly heart rate variability, blood pressure, brain waves, galvanic skin response, autonomic activity, and soon with the wristwatch like this, which has many sensors, it can look at hormone levels in your sweat. So these are all sensors. Okay, so they pick up all this information. You can get biological information digitally in an instant. So what they showed was, and these studies are coming out soon, that your entire cellular biology changes with the flicker of a thought. Okay? So if you're feeling anger, hostility, guilt, shame, mistrust, depressed, your cellular biology will show it instantly. On the other hand, if you're in a place of equanimity, peace, laughter, love, joy, compassion, the divine qualities, instantly all your biological markers will change, all of them, okay, at the level of cells. So biological markers are genes that are responsible for inflammation or its opposite, telomerase, which is the enzyme that controls the aging response. Then there are other enzyme activities that regulate cellular biology, or what is called self-regulation or healing. And there's then gene expression. So we got these results, and then I said to Rudy, I said, why don't we publish this? And we published it in LinkedIn. It was the most popular post for the new year. And then I said to Rudy, why don't we put together a group of people? And these include the best in their field. So Rudy's geneticist, brain scientist at Harvard. There's another person over there who does imaging. And then there's Eric Schott, who does gene expression at Mount Sinai. We got a stem cell researcher. We got Elizabeth Blackburn's team. And who else? And Eric Topol at Scripps. And we put together what is called a science consortium to see if we could, through very simple strategies, hope to create the next iteration of the human species. Biological transformation at the genetic level, changing the brain, and because now we know that epigenetics, the genes that get active, they influence the next generation. So in mice, you've seen these studies maybe recently, that mice that are exposed to a smell and then at the same time given electrical shock, so they associate the smell with fear, the next generation of mice will feel fear when exposed to the same smell. So this is called soft inheritance. And what we are saying is, if your genes, your neural networks, and everything at the level of cell biology is literally the metabolism of experience. Simple word. It's the metabolism of experience. We metabolize experience in our consciousness and we turn it into our biology. If this is true, and it seems to be with the studies, then let's do it. So let's take 50 people and create super brains, super genes, super biology. And the best way to measure it is through cell biology and also the biological markers of aging. Until now, the biological markers of aging have been crude: blood pressure, bone density, skin thickness, number of wrinkles, immune function, hormone levels. But now they're much more sophisticated. We can do cell biology. So the goal is first stop the biological process, stop, and then see how much you can reverse it. Okay? Theoretically now, scientists talk about 3 types of aging: biological aging, chronological aging, and psychological aging. So there are many things that influence your biological aging. One of them is your expectations of what it means to age. So if you think that you should retire at 65 and go to Florida and live in a nursing home afterwards, it's going to happen. On the other hand, if you think as you grow older you get wiser and sexier and more youthful, that's also going to happen. So we looked at 10 things that we do: changing perceptions, good sleep, meditation, healthy emotions, healthy food, not too complicated, by the way. You don't have to be a fanatic. You have to just enjoy life. So exercise, sleep, healthy emotions. What else did I say? Changing our expectations and perceptions, removing toxicity from your life. No toxic emotions, no toxic relationships, no toxic food. Okay? And then just be flexible in consciousness. Cultivate love, compassion, joy, equanimity, and let's see what happens. The early data shows that you'll change your biology. Now, to what extent, we don't know, but to a very significant extent. Your biological age does not have to match your chronological age. It can be 30 years different. Okay, so you could be 80, and you could chronologically, and you could be 55 biologically. On the other hand, you could be 55 chronologically, and you're smoking 2 packs a day, you're waking up with a hangover, you're in the midst of a messy divorce, and you're worried about your money. Your biological age is going to reflect that. Okay, so what we are saying is we are now embarking on a consciousness-based biology, understanding, and also technology, because technology is here to serve us. Technology is also the universe expressing itself as part of its evolution through the human nervous system. And I firmly believe this technology can create a new global brain through our social networks. What are the social networks? They're the neural networks of a global brain, emerging global brain. I mean, I went recently to the Middle East, and we had plane loads of people coming from Saudi Arabia and veils, and they would take their veils off and come to the lecture in jeans and argue with you. And, how did you find out that we were having this? Twitter, okay? So we're in a different age, and I think we have the capacity to do this. So our initial goal is to take 50 subjects. We'll finance it through the people who'll finance their own studies. Okay, so if you want to be a participant, you finance your own study, and we get all the 5 institutions: Mount Sinai, Scripps, UCSF, Harvard, and Chopra Foundation. We have Jerry and Glenda and Tara as our advisory committee. This is our connection with Aspen. So it's an Aspen partnership with everyone. We do this study with 50 people. We publish it, document it: self-directed biological transformation, cellular biology, genetic activation, gene expression, brain. We're calling it the consciosome instead of the connectome, because connectome means that the neurons connect with each other, but now calling it the consciosome because they consciously connect with each other. That's our initial study. Then we'll get gyms involved. I think Gina said that she's going to get all the yoga network involved. And there are 2 ways to do it. So first we said do the research study with a good protocol, be very strict about it, finance it, and get it published, because we already have the data. But then the second step is, and this happened today, we said, why not do something called the Aspen experiment? And the Aspen experiment is, let's call Aspen the city for well-being, okay? And let's make it a model. So we don't have to do the research, but we can all join in participating in the activity. And then we can create social networks and websites where we engage with each other to reinforce each other. And the study group is showing us what the results are, but we can assume that if we're doing that, we're also participating in the study. And then we have this great model to share with the rest of the world. The Aspen experiment, Aspen City of Well-Being, Body, Mind, and Spirit. And here's the research, and we go from here. So what we would like you to do, if you want to be part of the study or you just want to participate, leave your email. And our advisory team is Gina, Glenda, and Tara, who live here. And we have Jerry's support, and we'll make this happen. And this will be a new era in mind, body, spirit healing. And it doesn't mean we'll solve the mystery of why we exist. It's probably unsolvable, but we can enjoy a better life. Thank you.
Is it on? Deepak, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I think you all know, can everybody hear me? Yes? I'm Glenda Greenwald, president of the Aspen Brain Forum and Aspen Brain Lab. I want to thank the Aspen Institute and the Vanguard Society, and Gina and Jerry Murdoch for making this possible, and all of you for coming out on a nice cold night tonight. I think you can understand why Gina said our minds were blown, having had Tara, Shan, and Jerry Murdoch and I on the weekend with Gina and this beautiful gentleman here. And you all got a complete course in what he and Rudy have been thinking about for 30 years, and we're all just beginning to think about. So I'm here to field some questions for Deepak, and want to tell you that there are some books called The Super Brain outside if you're interested, and anybody interested in participating in a self-directed biological transformation initiative can please sign up or just leave your email. So any questions? I have a few questions. I want to say
one more thing. Rudy and I, thanks to you, will be here in July to do, what do you call it?
It's our Aspen Brain Lab and Aspen Brain Forum, and Rudy and Deepak will be our
He's the real scientist, okay? I'm just...
Yeah, you're just the...
I shoot the breeze.
They'll be our keynote speakers. To wait for the microphone, yes. So if we're ready, any questions from the audience? This is Deepak's favorite time. And if you'll just raise your hand, we'll bring a mic to you. Any questions? I see one here, and if you would just wait for the microphone, please.
Thank you so much, Deepak. Would you comment about the data about heart transplants where there's memory?
Okay, I mean, this happened almost 30 years when heart transplants first started. What happened is there was a report of a person who suddenly started having a craving for chicken McNuggets and French fries. He used to be a vegetarian before that. And they found out that the heart that he had was from a person who had that addiction. So the heart memory was in this person. Then there are lots of anecdotal reports that when the person gets somebody's heart transplant, they will mysteriously and synchronistically fall in love with the spouse, even though it's anonymous. They don't know where the heart transplant came from. Okay, in fact, somebody's making a movie on that right now because it's an interesting movie. The fact is, the heart, of course, is the most, the heart and brain are the two biggest organs for both memory and for emotions. You know, you say my heart is full of love, filled with compassion, and bursting with joy. The heart actually has a different chemistry in each of these states. But the deeper question is, where's the memory? And it seems that the memory can be downloaded by any organ. But the memory is actually not in the body. Okay? So when you die, where do the memories go? They go back to the field. And what is that field? It's the field of consciousness. In the Eastern wisdom traditions, they call it the Akashic field, okay? The zero-point energy field. Now, a lot of people in the West, they say the quantum vacuum, or the grid, or the matrix. These are popular words because people are beginning to understand that we actually have personal memories, we have collective memories, we have universal memories, and our genes actually carry the memories of evolution too. So where is memory? It's everywhere. Just like the molecules of our body are everywhere, the mind is everywhere, so is memory everywhere. But that's interesting that the heart, you know, the heart is a very interesting organ. You take it out, you put it in the right culture medium, it'll beat forever if you give it the right nutrients, because it has something called, it produces its own pacemaker, automaticity. It's a very intelligent organ. In fact, your heart is the seat of your emotions. And when you're stressed, the first thing that is picked up is heart rate variability, which is what these gizmos are doing right now. Okay.
Thank you. Amory, and is there a microphone here, please, in the second row?
As the search for intelligent life on Earth continues, I've made the acquaintance of a family of bonobos in Des Moines that have been co-reared with humans for 3 generations now, for 30 years. And the little 3-year-old bonobo, who is quite bilingual and bicultural, turns out to have a cluster in his placental DNA of 300 genes activated, normally associated with language, that are activated in humans but never before observed to be in other great apes. So it's a remarkable bit of epigenetic story starting to unfold. Could you, in that context, say more about consciousness as it extends to other beings than ourselves?
You know, if you had asked me this question 10 years ago, I would have said, you know, it's all kind of folklore. I was at a conference that Stuart Hameroff has in Tucson, in Arizona. And, you know, Stuart has worked with Sir Roger Penrose, and they have a theory of consciousness downloading through microtubules. They have thousands of scientists come there. So in the middle of this conference, a woman comes up to me and she says, you know, I communicate with birds. So, you know, I'm saying, you know, people come up to me and say all kinds of things. You know, so I said, what do you mean? She says, well, I can talk to a bird. And I said, show me. So we went in the garden. She sat down, and she looked at a bird on a tree, and she did something, and the bird flew over and was on her lap. And she stroked it, and then she let it go. I mean, I'd never seen anything like this, you know? So then what happened is I started reading Rupert Sheldrake's stuff, and Rupert's a good friend, who talks about dog communication, non-local, without the language. So your dog is in Paris, you're in London, and you decide to call home on the phone. The dog goes to the phone before you ring the bell, before the bell rings. Or when you decide to come home, the dog comes to the front door. And he's published this, and, you know, England's a country of dog lovers, so he gets his funding very easily. But then 3 years ago, he put on his website a video of a parrot called Nkisi. And this parrot belongs to a woman, a black woman in Harlem. And this parrot is not only can speak, has a vocabulary of 2,000 words, which some parrots do. It's a lot, by the way. I mean, Shakespeare's vocabulary was maybe 7,000, so 2,000 is pretty good for a parrot, right? So the parrot is upstairs and this is a video on, you can see the video. Parrot is upstairs. The woman is in the ground floor, and they do this experiment. So she's got a house of cards, and she's got other items. She picks up the phone, and the parrot upstairs says, hello, hello. She picks up a banana, and the parrot upstairs says, banana, banana. And, you know, they put this on the website, and Nkisi became the most popular African parrot in the world. And then, because he put it in his website, he got 3,000 emails from other people who owned these parrots. They said, we have psychic parrots. Okay, so what is this psychic phenomenon? This is non-local correlation. Okay, you're both entering the field, and there has to be an emotional bond. So you say, oh, this woman had an emotional connection with her parrot. People have emotional connections with dogs. So I started thinking about this, and then I mentioned it to Rudy. And Rudy said, you know, every time you eat a banana, you're communicating with the banana, aren't you? Because genes are sharing genes. So we share consciousness with everything in the universe. Now, it depends how deep you want to go. But this part about the language is the most fascinating part, because not only can apes learn language, but birds can learn language, and they can communicate with you. So it's an exciting frontier, but what it does show is that we share a consciousness field.
Thank you. Any other
This
questions
is
in
getting
the
a
third
bit-
row? If there's a mic, please.
By the way, if you want to get NIH funding for this project, don't show this part of the video. Anyway, all these communicating with parrots and psychic birds, lose your funding immediately.
Thank you so much for that lecture. That was
Thank you.
mind-blowing and heartwarming and wonderful. As you were speaking about us breathing in and out and sharing bodies, I loved what that sort of brought to me. And I'm a musician in town, and it made me think maybe when I play music, I'm doing the same thing with sound, that it's here, and I'm just reshaping that vibration and bringing it back out into the world in a different way, which was a neat way to feel. I've never thought of it that way before. But I'm wondering if you have a particular perspective on music, or
I
if
do.
you're incorporating music into your study
Very
at all.
much so. Here's the way to understand music is to look at the whole universe as a symphony. Okay? That's why we call it universe. Okay? It's one song. And your biological rhythms are part of that symphony. So we have something called circadian rhythms. And circadian rhythms is the rhythm that's disrupted when you have jet lag. So as the earth spins on its own axis, your body goes through this 24-hour rhythm. As the earth moves around the sun, you have seasonal rhythms. As the earth, sun, and moon move in relationship to each other, you have lunar rhythms. The gravitational effects of the dark matter have tidal rhythms and gravitational. So we have lots of rhythms, and they're part of the cosmic orchestra. And our body is dancing to it, even though we can't name the tune, in a sense. You know, our body's rhythms are dancing. So a lot of people say that disease starts with a disruption of rhythms in the body, the disruption in the music. And we now know that if you play Vivaldi, for example, or Beethoven's Fifth, or Tchaikovsky, or the Indian ragas, which are particularly tuned into these rhythms, you'll see different effects in cell biology and in microtubules, which are like little quantum computers in your cells, in your neurons. So this is a new frontier. Maybe, I don't know if you're familiar with, there's a journal called Music Therapy, Journal of Music Therapy. And in ancient wisdom traditions, he had no idea of epigenetics. They said the Buddha's mother was already playing music and singing songs to bring out an enlightened baby. Okay, and all the mythologies are filled with how the mother's state of consciousness and the music she heard and the music she played, even lullabies, to her baby in the womb would influence the personality. So we have a program actually at the center. It's called Magical Beginnings, Enchanted Lives. It's all based on music. And I think now we need a technology where you can wear a belt when you're pregnant and the baby's listening to Vivaldi.
Thank you.
And it'll influence the brain, obviously.
One last question, perhaps there. Is there a mic right there? Thank you.
Somebody has a question
One
there.
more, Ben.
Thank you very much. This has been fantastic. I'm very honored to be here. My question is a bit philosophical, something I've wondered about for a long time now, and I've started following you, and this is fantastic to get to ask you this question. So let's suppose that you meet someone and you fall in love and they turn out to be the love of your life. Would you view that event as something that you manifested from within, or is it something that God had planned for you from without? Or is it a combination of the both?
It's a combination of everything, because in the deeper, who's God? We are all God in drag,
Right.
you know? because it's the same consciousness with different mask. So, when they say Krishnamurti, we were talking about, somebody accused him of being an atheist. And he said, I used to be an atheist till I found out I was God, So God is that deeper intelligence. When you fall in love, falling in love is an act of the soul. Look at when people are in love. So they say when people are angry, they shout. Okay? When they start to fall in love, they whisper meaningless nothings. Okay? And when they are being in love, they're silent. Okay, so the deeper you go, that's a soul communion. Okay, so falling in love is an act of the soul.
Thank you.
It's your closest glimpse of God.
Perfect. Was there one more quick question over here? Are we all set?
There's a question.
One more?
An author, a physician in Santa Fe, has written a book, One Mind, and he tells the story of how the coyotes came up to his window and he communicated with the animals as he was writing it. The coyotes, oh, thank you. As if the coyotes were saying, get it right. And so his concepts of communicating with every sentient being as one mind, could you reflect on your perceptions of that concept?
The author that you mentioned is Larry Dossey,
Correct.
and the book is called One Mind. And when I was an intern, I read his book, Space, Time, and Medicine. And he was the one who inspired me. And Larry Dossey is somebody you should have here.
Absolutely.
And he is brilliant. And yes, the book is that we all share one mind, and we are part of that one mind. It's another word for consciousness. And therefore, these shamanic traditions, the shamans of South America, the healers, the Aborigines in Australia or wherever, the Vedic rishis, they felt themselves to be a part of a living universe. And that was the one mind. The universe is the one mind.
I think that's what you've been saying the whole time. That's perfect. Perfect way to end. Thank you so much, Deepak. You want to tell about the reception?
Just a word, there is a Vanguard chapter reception downstairs. And thank you all for coming again. We look forward to seeing you next time.
And there are books outside. Are there autographed books outside? Thank you.